In this video, we're making yarn. And it's not the same kind of yarn I've been making a lot of lately. Today, I wanted to make a yarn that would be suitable for crochet, so keep watching to see how it turns out. I wanted to make a happy, colorful yarn today, and I definitely think these colors are going to accomplish that. In an effort to card these colors together in a somewhat organized way while still making this feel painterly and not perfect, I decided to start with the greens and blue first, placing them in kind of a striped way, but also randomly. I really just do this by feel, if I'm honest, but I do wish I had packed on each layer a little bit thicker because, as you'll see later in the video, there are sections of this bat that feel a bit more muted than I was hoping for. Then I moved on to the coral, yellow, and pink, and basically just keep layering the colors on in the same order over and over again. I tried something different with the packer brush. Normally, I only use it backwards as you're seeing me use it now. Because of the angle of the wire bristles, I find it gets into the bat better this way, helping to push the fibers down into the drum more. But I was watching a video by Made Weave Love on Instagram the other day, and I noticed that she uses the brush forward. So I decided to try that as well, and discoveries were made. When using the brush forward, it acts more like a brush or a comb. So it really helps to integrate the fibers together on the drum rather than just push them down into it. I didn't even really notice that that was what's happening until I started pre-drafting my wool before spinning. At that point, I really realized the fibers were sticking together so much better than they usually do, and it seems so obvious to me now. Once I took the bat off the drum, you can tell from each side, at least a little bit, the difference between combing and not combing. The back side of the bat, the side that I started on, the colors look a lot more chunky and disconnected, whereas the front side, they look more connected. And look at me, finally remembering to actually weigh the wool before I start spinning. So I ended up with 68 grams or 2.4 ounces of carded wool to spin. I really thought that this would be more, and I think I need to push myself to try to pack more onto the drum next time and really see how much I can get onto it. Since this is going to be a 2-ply yarn and I don't have any single-ply wool yarn kicking around, I'm also going to be spinning some natural / off-white merino as well for that. I weighed this out to be close to the same amount of wool as my carded bat, which I later realized was silly because I had planned to make this yarn thinner than the Colourful yarn was going to be. Next up, I'm splitting the wool into narrower pieces and pre-drafting each of them. I have become such a huge fan of pre-drafting. I find it makes it so much easier to spin later, particularly because I'm spinning with a super fine merino wool, which means that the staple length is quite long. Since I've been spinning so much coarse spun yarn, I don't have a lot of practice spinning single ply yarn on my Ashford E-Spinner Jumbo, and honestly, it has been since college over 12 years ago that I was spinning yarn consistently on a manual spinning wheel, so I definitely have to regain the muscle memory of spinning a nice even yarn. So I decided to start with the off-white Plying yarn to hopefully get the hang of it a bit again. And I will say there is definitely a bit less control when using an e-spinner. At least that's what I'm finding versus using a manual spinning wheel. Since you're treadling with your feet on a manual spinning wheel, you can easily speed up or slow down when you need to, but with the e-spinner, I have to stop the wheel entirely to change the speed dial. I'm definitely not quick enough or confident enough to try to change the speed dial while it's still moving, but maybe I will get there eventually. This yarn definitely was not as even as I was hoping it to be, but it will still work completely fine. Much like with weaving or crochet or knitting, there's a feel and muscle memory that only comes with a lot of practice. So this is just the beginning of that. I hope to get to a place where I can easily spin a super even yarn. Now we get to move on to the colorful carded wool. I spun this a bit thicker. How thick? I don't really know. Much like the off-white yarn, I had a hard time making this really even. And I think that likely has to do with the fact that my bats are never perfectly even. There are some thicker spots and some thinner spots. Could this be resolved with a second round of carding? Probably, but then the colors get a lot more muddy. But maybe we need to do a direct comparison of carding once versus twice in another video to see how much of a difference it really makes. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see that. This wool was a lot more fun to spin because my goodness, is it far more interesting to look at. It's so fun to see how the colors show up when the wool is spun, and it's always a really exciting surprise to see how it ends up turning out. It's time for plying and regrets. At least a little bit of regrets. Instead of creating an evenly plied yarn, which in retrospect would have been the better way to go, I went for my default of spiral plying the colorful yarn around the white yarn. There's nothing wrong with doing it this way, but it made for a thinner yarn than I would have gotten if I had just done an even ply. I also think an even ply in this case wouldn't have changed the look of the yarn, since the off-white isn't near as thin as the yarn I have used in the past for spiral plying. Long story short, an even ply would have left me with a thicker yarn. It wouldn't have been more yardage, but being thicker, it would have gone further in a project. I swear, every time I go to put the yarn on the Niddy Noddy, it takes me a second to remember the right way to wrap it around it and do it properly. Also this time, I am steaming the yarn to set the twist. Normally I skip this step if I'm making a yarn for the sole purpose of frame loom weaving, because honestly, I've just found that it isn't really necessary for that purpose. But since I want to use this for crochet, I wanted to make sure that I did the whole process properly. Color me shocked when I realized I only ended up with about 32 yards of this yarn, which was about 3.6 ounces or 106 grams once I had it plied. That's like the final weight. It's definitely not enough to crochet anything very big, I don't think. Maybe I could get a headband out of it, but I was hoping for more of a toque situation. So if you have any suggestions of what I could make with this, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and want to watch another, check out this one next.